Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Hello, and welcome to the BjjBrick Podcast, brought to you by the Underwear of the Month Club. Discreetly bringing sexy novelty underwear to men for over 30 years. I'm on the line with my co-host, Gary Hall, and my good buddy, Byron Jabbar. Fun fact, Byron's not only a member of the club, he's also the president. How you guys doing today?
You know, just doing great. I'm in my elephant wear underwear right now, and, just having a good time, twirling the trunk. What about you guys?
Doing good. I've just discovered I'm part owner or maybe president of this company, and that's let's just say business is booming.
And definitely make sure you check out our Facebook page, because Joe is going to put some pictures up of Byron in the Underwear of the Month Club.
Well, don't go to that.
Byron, what do we got on the show this week?
Oh, man, we've got a great episode. Sometimes a thing comes along and it's like, it's you feel like it's for you or it's not for you. It could be like a DVD or maybe a new technique or something. And like, it seems like some things people just gravitate towards more than others. And I got this app on my phone called Marune. And we've talked about this app a couple times on the show, but I'm loving this app. It's really made a big difference in it's partial motivation to train. It is encouraging to see other people train, and I've really enjoyed the process of it. I've been training since 2002, and I've never been good at documenting my training, and this is doing that for me, and it's fun. And Jason Elliot is the interview this week. He developed the app. He's the guy to talk to when you want to talk about this app, and definitely talk about what tracking training can do and those sort of developments that this app can do for you. We also talk about jiu-jitsu stuff. So he had some issues on the mat, and we cover those. So it's kind of just a fun conversation. We do talk about the app a bit, but it's definitely not the entirety of the conversation. But the app, I do highly recommend it. It is for free, and there's really two sides to it. There's a social network side of it, and then there's the tracker training side. And I'll spell it for you real quick, and just go to the show notes, and it'll be right there for you as well. But it's Marune is how you spell the name of the app there, and type it in wherever you find apps, and it'll pop right up. And then go and add me, Byron Jabbar, or you can search for BjjBrick. I've got Joe connected on there as well with my thing, and so me and Joe are buddies on there, and maybe someday I'll have Gary on there. So,
not a chance. I'll never be your buddy.
You know me too well, Gary.
The one thing Marune has done is Byron used to post every day, 3 or 4 times a day on Facebook after he trained to let everybody know about it. And I don't know anymore because he's putting it all on Marune. Marune's a great product. Like Byron said, check it out. Check the interview out. Don't miss that part. And it's free, and it's built by Jason Elliot, who is also another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. So check it out.
Yeah. That's one thing you joke about that, and it's fine if you post your trainings all the time online. That's great. None of us do that. Out of the 3 of us, none of us are daily posters, or even I would say we're all less than 5 or 10% of the time we train, we post. Gary I don't think I've ever seen a training post from Gary. If somebody special comes in town, a lot of times I'll post that. And I've seen Joe post a couple things, but not a lot. Most of the time, training goes unposted on Facebook. But I try to get a picture every class and put that up on Marune, because it's more fun. And the people there are the people who do jiu-jitsu, who are be interested in that. They're not my aunts and uncles or people from work. They're jiu-jitsu people. And so those pictures, I think, are more appropriate there. So I'm happy to do that and to share those pictures. And I look down those pictures and see a bunch of my buddies and remember times training. So, yeah, it's different.
So as a little bit of a sales pitch, here's what I'm looking forward to the most as far as Marune helping me out. You're talking about posting your training. I can make posts about my training on Facebook, and when I have a good week and I train 4 or 5 times, I can make multiple posts, and everybody's like, oh man, Joe's training like a madman. And then when I have an off week or life's getting in the way and I don't train, maybe I've got 2 weeks go by where I only train 3 times. Nobody really knows about that. It just kind of goes unknown. But there's a big buzzword in the personal growth world, accountability. And I think with an app like Marune, there's some accountability there because it's a smaller community and the object is to post every time you post. And you can go to somebody else's page and you can look at their training regimen. So if I get a week or 2 weeks where I only train 3 times, that's right there for everybody to see. So there's some accountability there. And I think that's tracking my training has always helped me. But I think now that the other people have the opportunity to look at my tracking, that's going to hold me accountable. And as somebody who purports to want to promote jiu-jitsu, I feel that I need to be accountable for that and get some training in.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel it's motivated me a couple of times when I look on my weekly training log and there's like 1 dot on there. You train this day. I'm like, okay, it's Friday. I gotta train.
Yep.
I gotta train Friday, and if I can't, I definitely gotta train Saturday. Like 1 dot is not acceptable for what I'm wanting to do my rate. Looking back at last week, I've got 4 or 5 dots. Let me pull it up, but I feel good about that. Like I feel like I've done a good amount of training this week, and I'm good to go. I don't know. I think it is. There's definitely a motivation side that I've never needed motivation to go train, but I kind of get that enjoyment of filling it out at the end of training. Guys, we have an off the mat lesson that we drag back onto the mat, and this time I'm going to handle that one. If I can get it onto the mat, we'll see. My wife and I were in the state of Oregon. I don't know if it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. And driving through, we rented a car and we're driving through. Beautiful state, and hope to return someday. But when we went to get gasoline, I filled up. I'm almost 40 years old. I've been driving since I was, 16. I filled up vehicles with gasoline and diesel fuel thousands of times. It's not a big deal. We go to get gas, and I'm getting it out. I'm hooking it up and everything. And this guy comes over and starts yelling at me. And he didn't speak perfect English, so there's a little bit of a language barrier there. But he was yelling no, and he was yelling I do, no, and he was really adamant about this. And I'm like, man, like my first thought is, I've always pumped my own gas. I've never gone to the thing where you tip the person and they do the full service and all that sort of thing back in the 40s. Gary could tell us stories about that.
Or if you're in New Jersey.
Yes, that's right. Same thing in New Jersey.
New Jersey and Oregon. Yep.
And this guy's like he's upset with me. And I'm like, golly, calm down, man. I'll take my business elsewhere is what I was thinking. But I was like, I just want to get gas and get back on the highway. But yeah, what's happening here is it's illegal to pump your own gasoline in Oregon. I think they've changed some of those rules in Oregon. And in some places you can, some places you can't. But yeah, in New Jersey, it's still, I just looked it up on Google, still illegal to pump your own gasoline. And I don't know, maybe there's some justification behind that. I think really it's people getting money and having a job that's protected. It's not, I don't think it's a particularly dangerous thing. As a firefighter, I've never been to a call where somebody, has been injured by pumping their own gas. Anyway, he was very upset. I was not a happy customer because it's rare in today's day and age when a business, a customer service person is upset with you as a customer. Like I felt like, man, this guy is not treating me like a good customer. All the whole while, I'm the one breaking the law, or at least breaking the rules that the state has, and I just didn't know the rules. That's all there is to it. And so I think you drag it back onto the mat. You go to you travel through, and you're going to a different school and training, or a different instructors teaching at your school, or something might be different, and the rules might be different. And if you don't know those, you could feel like the person trying to pump gas, like, well, I've done this 100 times. Yeah, I've done a bunch of heel hooks. Well, that's fine. I know how to do it safely. I'm not going to injure anybody. But you could very easily get somebody upset with you. You can get somebody upset with you for the wrong gi color. You walk in the door, and they're already upset with you because you have, a camo gi or a black gi or something like that. If you know the rules, I wouldn't have ever got out to pump my own gasoline. But because I didn't know the rules, I got this guy yelling at me. I'm confused. My wife thinks it's interesting. Like what is going on here? And just try to figure out the rules of the gym before it gets past the point. So if it's uniform related, you'd have to look that up on the website, or if you contact them. It's always good if you're traveling to call ahead and say, hey, I'm in town. I'd like to train with you guys. Anything I should know before I show up. And that's when it's their job to say, oh, yeah, we do a few things that you might not expect. Bring no patches on your gi, or if you have a plain gi, or maybe where your rival patches, I don't know. But just kind of knowing the rules sets you up for success instead of having a uncomfortable experience, because an uncomfortable experience on the mat is a little different than somebody yelling at me next to a car. Could be a little bit worse.
Byron, I like that. I was going to say I like that. And I'm also going to take it, another step too is knowing the rules you're talking about. I can think about a tournament I was cornering a guy in, and he, it's crazy because there's leg locks galore in this tournament, but I guess there was no heel hooks in his division. We did not go to the rules meeting. We skimmed over the rules. It was my mistake for not checking out, and he got disqualified from the championship match for finishing with a heel hook. And, we need to know the rules. Just a bad job of me as his coach not knowing about that.
Yeah, good tournaments, that's equally important. When you sign up for a tournament and you want to do a tournament, first thing you should do is look at the rules. And let's just say heel hooks are legal, Well, I don't really want to change my game and add heel hooks, but you better know how to defend them because they're going to be coming at you.
I think another way we could take this, one thing we always talk about is growing jiu-jitsu, growing your school. And I just thought back to what you were saying. You pulled up to the gas station. First of all, I don't think that guy was ready. You should have never got as far as you did before that guy came out. I'm thinking of a business perspective. I would want my gas pumpers to be right on that as soon as you pulled up. They should be with really good service, Chick-fil-A type service. They're already going to, be at your window. Hey, what do you want? 89, 91, 87, ethanol, you name it. But so I think of it as jiu-jitsu wise. And I see this on forums that I'll be on, and somebody will say, hey, I'm going to Wichita, Kansas. I would like to train. Anybody know any good schools? And, they'll point out, Byron's gym. And next guy will say, yeah, I've tried messaging them on their Facebook page, and I've tried calling them, the number I found on their website, and nobody has got back to me. And, I also think too, as a business owner, we need to, make sure our contact information is available. We need to, so people can check with us about that. But then let's say we've got a local guy who comes into our school wearing a camouflage gi, and we don't allow camouflage gis. Maybe instead of sending him home, I know like your school, Byron, has a whole bunch of extra gis. I know Joe has extra gis in his gym bag that he brings all the time. It's, we never want to make a customer feel terrible. And if you don't feel good, and you said this, your exact words, Byron, you were saying when that guy was yelling at you, you're like, I don't want to be a customer of this. I'm going to go down the store and get gas down at a Quick Trip.
Yeah, if it were easy, I would have got just across the street, but it was several miles down the road.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if I was going to jiu-jitsu the first time and I show up in a camo gi because my buddy Gary was clowning on me and telling me, hey, camo gis are the whole rage, and
or you show up in a taekwondo gi.
Yeah, and I've seen that before. I've seen people come in their taekwondo gi, and we still need to make that person feel comfortable, tell them the rules for the next class and pass that, but maybe let him train in his taekwondo gi. It might get ripped off, or, have some extra gis available, stuff like that, because, we want to grow our gym. As our gym grows, we're going to, have more training partners. We're going to get better, and we're going to spread jiu-jitsu to the rest of the world.
Gary, I like the way you turned that around a little bit. Like that Byron brought this from the student's perspective, and then you kind of turn it around to the business side of it. I've got a really good Oregon gas story as well. I spent most of my life living in Oregon, and my first job was actually pumping gas. And Byron, I had to run a few guys down too, but that's not the story I want to tell. My wife and I were taking a trip down the coast one day, and we stopped to get gas, and this was many years ago when gas was cheaper, and we were driving a small car, and the guy comes up after he pumps our gas and says that'll be $12.50 or something of that nature. And my wife says, $12.50. She said, I've never put more than $10 worth of gas in this car before. So I asked the guy, I said, this is considerably more than we were used to paying. I guess this dates me a little bit. I'm worried about $2 worth of gas. But, I called the guy out on it, and he goes, because I'm looking at the sign right there, and it's like 98 cents a gallon or something. He goes like, no, you're in the full service lane, and it's $1.10 a gallon. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm in the full service lane? What different services do I get for being in the full service lane? He's like, well, if you would ask me, I would check your tire pressure. I'd check your oil. It's like,
you're like, okay, do it.
Well, I was in a hurry, so I didn't. But I'm like, so you're telling me I paid 10% more for this product because you would have checked the pressure of my tires? So bringing it back to what you were talking about, Gary, I would just add to what you said, that as a business owner, you should make sure that the customers get what they're expecting or what you're selling. If you say we offer A, B, and C, then, guys should come in and get that and not kind of be disappointed like I didn't get what I was expecting. Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking about when Byron, the guy come running out to Byron. I just felt like the service wasn't there. He let Byron go through so many of the steps beforehand. And that's just like your situation, Joe. Like maybe as you pulled up into the full service lane because of a big mistake by you driving, and had to throw something out there, Joe. But, as he goes in, hey, what kind of gas do you want? And back in your day, it was regular unleaded. So you're saying, hey, give me regular. But at that point, it's like, hey, I can check your wipers. I can check your oil. I can check your tire pressure. Would you like those done? And, offer it. I mean, and go from there. And you're like, hey, I want all of them. And then like you said, Joe, you'd felt a lot better paying 10% more, at least knowing going on down the road that you got oil, proper oil in your vehicle, and oil in your vehicle, and your tire pressure is perfect, which is going to get you better gas mileage and hopefully make up for that extra 10% you saved.
Yeah, and Joe still regularly offers to check oil on the mats.
Well, he's never asked me. He just does it.
Yeah, men's health, baby. I'm all about men's health.
Joe, what do we have for the quote of the week as I transition away from that potential disaster?
Yeah, so this week's quote is brought to us by a 17th century author from France, Ninon de L'Enclos. That's my best guess at how you would pronounce her name. And actually, this quote is not something that I would have expected to find from a 17th century author, but I like it. Every action we take, everything we do is either a victory or a defeat in the struggle to become what we want to be. Gary, have you ever heard that you never drive on the same set of tires twice?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so think about it. You leave your house, you go about your daily business, and the next day when you leave your house, your tires are not in the same condition they were before.
Yep, I had never thought about that, but yeah.
So that's good. And our lives are pretty much the same, except unlike tires that continually get a little bit more worn, we have the option to either become a better version of ourselves or a little bit less. And you're never the same twice. So I like that this puts the emphasis on the actions that we take and the decisions that we make. And so tomorrow I'm going to be either a little bit closer to the version of myself that I want to be, or I'm going to be a little bit behind. So it's up to me and it's up to you whether you're closer or further.
I like that, Joe. And I like thinking about this as, with Jason Elliot with the Marune. I'm sitting there thinking about, you brought that up too, Byron, it was you, Joe, brought it up about being held accountable for your training. You think about Marune, you're putting it out there, your teammates, your friends know that you're training. You're doing something to make you a better jiu-jitsu person, which in turn I think makes you a better person each and every day. You're being held accountable, by putting it on Marune, by letting your buddies know. But I really like this quote right here.
Yeah, it is a good one. I think it's also helps with the outlook on things, because we're going to have victories and we're going to suffer defeats. If we remember that a defeat is not permanent, think of it as part of the struggle in becoming who you're going to be ultimately.
And I think a defeat is really going to help us. We are going to have defeats. It's never going to be, we're not going to be 400-0. We're always going to have defeats, coming up. We're always going to run into a loss.
Gary's one of the most versatile people in defeats I know.
but we're going to learn from our defeats, and that's going to keep us on our path and make us better if we keep an open mind. Because there are people who lose, and I hear this every week, especially on Saturdays and Sundays when their favorite college football team or their favorite pro football team loses. I got a buddy who's a big K-State fan, and every time they lose, it's always the ref's fault. And I was just thinking, I was like, man, you imagine if this guy trained jiu-jitsu with us? Like, he would probably be the least popular guy in the whole place. He would probably never get better because every time he got tapped out, he's going to find a reason to blame somebody. And, then I see the people who take a defeat, and I don't like to call it losing, because I still don't think there's winning or losing. I think it's, winning or learning.
Well, but in football, you lose.
Yeah,
there's a win and a loss.
But, I do think you learn. I can think of so many times, let's say I lose in a jiu-jitsu match. I can get more out of that a lot of times than winning. There's just so much to it, to get me back on path, and it's going to depend on my attitude, how I feel about that. Am I going to complain and blame the referees? Am I going to blame the other guy for, say he sandbagged? Am I going to, blame this and that instead of, keeping an open mind? And speaking of that, talking about sandbagging or whatever, I saw a cool quote about wrestling. And, they were talking about seeds for a tournament. And they had a wrestler, in the meme, and it just said, I don't, how did it go? Something like, I don't worry about seed. I can't even remember it, but it was just something that, don't worry about the seed, just go out there and wrestle. And it was a great meme, and I'm going to try to find it. And if I do, I'll get it posted on our Facebook page.
Gary, you make a great point about that quote. You would have made a great point about the quote.
I would have if I could have remembered.
You're one step closer, Gary. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Gary, that point about the NFL, though, it's interesting, and blaming the refs. It's interesting that the higher you go in organized sports towards excellence, towards the top level, the less you see of that. You see a high school player is much more likely to be concerned about bad calls or bad play calling or, finding someone else to blame. And man, I really appreciate when you see a high-level quarterback or a coach and, you see a post-game interview and they've got reason. Maybe there was a bad call made. They've got reason to blame the ref or blame some outside circumstances, injuries to a star player or something. And they never do. They say, we needed to play better. We need to focus on the details. We need to be more disciplined. They always take personal responsibility for the loss and as opposed to blaming it on somebody else.
That's a good point, Joe.
Yeah. I think of a lot of athletes I've interviewed on here, and they lost the decision because they thought they were winning. And you know what? I could have pushed the pace. I could have went for the submission. I could have racked up some more points. We were tied. I thought I was going to win, or maybe the point system really wasn't in this sort of tournament that they're in. Maybe it's sub only, and they thought, well, I'll get the decision. I've done a better job, and it didn't go so well. And most of them take that like, man, I didn't do the right thing. As an athlete, I failed. I should have fought the entire match to my best of my ability, and I probably would have won that, but I didn't. And yeah, that's another lesson in defeat. You either learn from it or you don't. But if you're able to learn from your defeats, you'll be a lot further ahead in the game as you glean lessons from things that really strike you hard sometimes.
Yep, there's winning and there's learning, and Gary is the smartest guy I know.
Maybe not the smartest, but he's improved the most. Because when you start real low,
I'm catching up quick, though.
No, Joe's already said I'm the smartest guy he knows. But
I'm catching up quick, brother.
I'll never forget that. My Joe gave me a compliment. Now, if I can get Byron to give me a compliment, I am in real good shape today.
Gary, I've always appreciated your subtle good looks.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
That's my favorite compliment to give somebody. Because some of these good looks are subtle. They're really not there. Anyway, gentlemen, let's get on with the interview with Jason Elliot. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He has never gotten a paper cut. He blocks it on a microscopic level. Rather than telling an opponent how poor their BJJ skills are, he simply buys them a BJJ audiobook to help them out. He once put a chokehold on a honey badger and got a pint of honey. It was a sweet move.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BjjBrick Podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Jason Elliot to the BjjBrick Podcast. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Byron. It's really fun to be here.
Yeah, it's fun to have you, and I've also had a good time using your app. We've got a lot to talk about, training and different ideas behind that, but the short end of the story is you created an app that is geared towards helping jiu-jitsu people train, log their training, and connect with each other. So, Jason, off to kind of a weird start on my end, but I want you to introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about the app in a little bit, but just tell me, who is Jason Elliot, and where you train and what you up to?
So I've been training about 5 years. I live in Colorado with my wife, Katie, who you talked to earlier this year. I've been here about 20 years up in here, originally from Florida. Kind of always been active, mostly as an endurance athlete. My Katie, when she moved to Boston to get her master's in nutrition, it was the first time I haven't sort of been, we've got miles and miles of roads and mountains and everything to train endurance sports. And when I was in Boston, especially through the winter school season, that didn't really exist. And so I was looking for some other outlet. Kind of a longer story, but I have one of my best friends in the world is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And for years, he's been talking about doing it. And I would take a class here or there, but extremely sporadically, just never really got into it because I was biking and running. Moved to Boston, found a school that was there. And I called my friend, Ernest, who's now my coach professor, and said, "Hey, there's a school here. How would you feel if I actually started training here as opposed to coming back with you?" And Ernest, as all good friends are, he's, no, train there. I'll help you from here however I can, but see if you like it. And I was training in Boston, started training, and by being able to put some real time into it, fell in love with it, and have been training as much as I can with work and family ever since then. 48 now. I'm a blue belt. I think I'm going on my 5th year coming up in February, and just really enjoy it.
That's great. I think that's a pretty relatable story as far as falling in love with it and discovering that. You also are you the creator of the Marune app?
Yeah, so I'm the creator. It was my idea. I don't understand programming in the least bit. So I have a good friend who I've fortunately known for years and years and years. His name is Cheo. And he has a company called Leap Digital. And so when I was kind of forming this idea in my head, I called him and I said, "I've got this idea. Do you think it's got legs? Is it a waste of time? And, can you help me do it?" And, he said, I think there's something to it. And I can absolutely help you. I can put you in touch with good programmers. And, so I work with Cheo and his team at, he's Leap Digital, and I work with the programmers at Perfect 10. And so they actually do the actual programming and that kind of work. We meet all the time to talk about ideas, where I want it to go, the next, what each update's going to look like. And we kind of slated in on time and budget to see what's coming around the pipe. But we've got, I think, three or four pages now of potential updates for the future if the app continues to grow like it is. That's awesome. And I definitely am enjoying the app and I'm rooting for it. So that's something that talking about it a little bit on the podcast, a lot of listeners have added me as a friend, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's a fun way to connect with people in the jiu-jitsu world. And originally, when I downloaded it, it was literally just to log my training. And now I find myself going on there more and more to see how everybody else is doing.
So that's cool. We'll talk more about the app in a little bit. I do want to get to know you a little bit more. Tell me about like your style of jiu-jitsu, what you like to play, any favorite techniques you have?
So it's, for whatever reason, and I find myself, I'm more of a guard passer, and I don't know why that is, but it seems like whenever I've, for almost the entirety of my training, whenever, you bump fists, I wind up being the guy moving forward into trying to move past it. So I've found myself I play a guard passing game. I try to utilize pressure, either the double unders or the over under are my two main passes. Mostly I think my highest percentage choke is the head and arm choke. I really like that one, and I'm managing to get a little bit better at it so I can hit it from kind of different angles. That's the majority of my game. When I'm on my back, I mostly just try to go into half guard and try to keep somebody's weight off me, because I'm not particularly big. So it's I usually try to play half guard and just either try to work out to the side or dive in for a deep half. But recently I've realized that's an incredible weakness. Like, my arm bars are really not that strong. My triangles aren't great. So I'm trying to just commit to, I'm going to work for guard and then try to work the basics from there, because those are just two, I think, pretty significant holes in my game at this point, are arm bars and triangles. I'm just, as long as I've done it, I feel like I should be hitting those fairly well, and I'm just sloppy.
Well, we all have areas in our game that we can't improve upon, that's for sure. Head and arm triangle guy from top, I'm the same way. I enjoy that choke, and I've had some success with it. Some of the details of that, are you setting that up as you pass, or are you passing and then finding the choke?
So I set it up because, what'll happen, because I play that over under. If I get the double under, I'm really happy, but most of the time I wind up in kind of a double under, and I don't always free the leg. So I wind up sort of in half guard from the top, where, my waist is on his waist, and I start kind of moving back up the body, and I try to get that far side arm off the mat a little bit with my elbow, and then I'll reach under it and I'll dive for it there, and that's where I'll start the choke. And sometimes I can get it there, but usually when they're worried about the choke, I'll pass my other leg over and get fully to the side. So I tend to get it most of the time from half guard. The other time I get it a lot, and this is embarrassing to admit, but I think my weakest position is probably full mount. And so when I'm there, rather than try to do anything fancy from full mount, I'll just try to dive the head under and then move to the side. So I usually get it from half guard or from full mount is where I tend to find it the most.
Huh. Why do you say, and this is just two guys talking about jiu-jitsu, and I think that everybody has that experience, especially, like before you get all the positions kind of figured out, you're not real confident in your mount game. What happens? Are they shrimping out? Are they rolling you, or what's going on there?
It's like I said, it's really like I would almost at the point with my full where I almost just abandon it and go to, try to go to half. Like when we're doing, drills, like positional drills, and, you're in the dominant position, you're trying to help the guy in the bottom. I either get rolled, or typically it's rolled, or the guy does a good job of sort of just bucking out. And I can't figure out how to float enough while keeping pressure to where, they feel my weight and I can move, but I'm floating enough that I can move if they either go for that simple roll, or, that, I'm also good probably where I don't know what it's called, where you put both your hands under the armpit and then swing your legs up. I never think about it because I'm not limber enough, so people surprise me with it all the time. But it's Byron, I got to tell you, I get, just between me and you, I guess me, you, and the entire podcast world, I get super frustrated on those positional drills because, like, I'll last like a minute, or not even a minute, like 30 seconds, and I'm out. It's just, just repeatedly I'm getting blown out of, I'm supposed to be in the dominant position. And so I've tried to work more of a high mount, where I come up and try to get my knees under the elbows and then use my hands as kind of outriggers. Yeah. And that's a little better. Yeah. But I just don't know. I don't know where the hole is in my top mount game. It's just embarrassing. Oh. It's the only time I think in jiu-jitsu that I get super frustrated at practice is when we do that particular positional drill, because I know I'm supposed to be getting submissions or at least threatening. And I spend most of my time trying not to get thrown off. I very rarely get to an attack.
So, Jason, I don't think that these. So first off, I appreciate you sharing, these parts of your game with the audience, because I think that these types of conversations need to happen more often. And I definitely don't have all the answers. I've never even seen you grapple, but what you're describing, it sounds like common things. Having the knowledge that you like to set up head and arm chokes, and even doing that from mount. Like, I don't typically set this up from mount because I'm afraid of getting rolled. Like side control, I feel so safe from doing that. There's like the extreme example would be that you go for an armbar from mount and you miss it, you end up on the bottom. That happens a lot. So head and arm from side control, if I miss that, nothing bad happens to me on top. And so I know as soon as I put that arm behind their neck and I start digging, that in deeper to get that shoulder pressure on their neck, that I need to be super aware of somebody rolling me, because I've committed that arm, and they have to. And another thing is their incentive, Jason, is this guy's thinking, I got to roll him or he's going to choke me. Like, you're giving them a strong incentive to get out of there now. And then your other issue, and sounds like you started to solve this, is that if your hips are low on their hips while you're in mount, and that's typically where you would be while you're trying to set up the head and arm choke. You're not doing that from a high mount. Their bridging action, that oompa, is going to hit you like with all the force because you're low on that lever. Right. And if you're higher up, like if you get that like an S mount where most of your body is above their pectoral muscles, and they can bridge all day, and you don't even move from that. And so you're low, which is fine, but you've got to be expecting that any bridging they do is going to make you move quite a bit. Low mount is perfectly fine. It's a great place to set up, controlling the head and that arm. But just be aware of that. And you said, I'm just trying to stay on top. That's all we're trying to do, anybody. I think so changing your goals will cut down, I think, on the frustration. If instead of submitting somebody from mount, which people are hard to submit, if you're rolling with somebody and they're doing jiu-jitsu too, like they're pretty good at jiu-jitsu already. Like that's pretty, it's hard to tap out any color of belt, just, based on that. Yeah. So calm down that, like I should tap this person out. Well, actually, I think your first goal should be to stay there for a little while longer. And be less. And I remember some of my previous instructors, be less committed to those submissions and be more committed to that position. And if they start to roll you, like I would know, I'm not going to finish very many head and arm chokes from my guard. I'm not going to try that. So if I'm rolling, I'm going to abandon that submission anyway if they're going to roll me over. So abandon it before I get rolled over and try to stay on top. And I don't know. I think it's interesting. Like, have these conversations with your coaches and the people who are escaping quickly. Like, what can I do to prevent that? And they should help you out and help your top game.
All right, I think. I will say one thing I picked up, and I'm sure you know this, but it changed my head and arm choke game quite a bit. Is my instructor Ernest? He taught a variation because to prevent getting rolled to where you take. So you got the so imagine I'm on the head and arm choke is coming from my left side.
Sure.
Then use my right arm to grip and make the choke tighter. He teaches a variation where you actually take your right arm and post it out and sort of lean into the choke with kind of one hand getting it tight.
Yeah.
It knocked my being rolled significantly. It was a really nice variation that made me much more comfortable in going for the head and arm choke.
Yeah.
And what I like about it is what you said is if you blow it and they roll the other way, you're still in a good position. It's not a full on, I dove for an armbar and missed, and now I'm in a lot of trouble. So I think I like the safety factor of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And just, I don't know. I think it's that I didn't plan on having this conversation about like one specific choke, but anybody could have these conversations with anybody you're rolling with when something gets frustrating. Like, talk about A, the technique, and B, are your goals correct? Because if somebody is really good at escaping mount, like my goal is not to submit them anymore. My goal is to keep them there. And it might even be to keep them there for a minute versus keep them there for the entire, rest of the round or whatever. Like your goals, you need to change those goals based on who you're working with to help avoid that frustration and notice progress. Because if your goal is to submit somebody and they're a black belt and, you want to work this choke from out, like, you're not going to reach that goal for a long time. And that's frustrating. But, you hold them there for 30 seconds, and next week you hold them there for 40, and then a month later they're stuck for a minute. You're definitely accomplishing things in this process. And I think if you look at the app, you're tracking your training as you go. That shows that progress, and I think that's one of the cool things about it.
That's really helpful. I think I will, because I always look at it like it's a dominant position. You should be winning with it, but maybe I will change my thinking to, I'm going to see if I can last 30 seconds here, and then 45, and then see if I can build the progress sort of just, for my own sense of mental health, build a little progress into that, and then begin to see what happens. Yeah, that's a great tip.
As you do keep somebody there for that minute and a half, what happens is they have to do more desperate things to get out. They may not become like frustrated and freak out, but what they were doing, it isn't working anymore. So maybe their arms loosen up, or they do something that they probably shouldn't do to try to create more space, and it opens up the door.
That's great.
Do you prefer gi or no gi?
So when I first started training, I was exclusively gi. I mean, hate's almost not a strong enough word. I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I would see a space, I'd want to get there. I couldn't because somebody was grabbing my sleeve or my lapel or just the friction. And I just got frustrated because even as a beginner, I'd say, I can get to that spot and I'll be happy. And then I couldn't get to that spot. And it's just hot. I just felt like, I just sweltered in the thing. I remember Katie, when I was getting into it and really getting passionate, she asked, my professor at the time, what can I do to help him? He's like, buy him a gi. And she told me that. I was like, no, don't get me a gi. I hate it. And so she didn't. And then moved back. And so that was a gi and no gi school, Gracie Barra Back Bay in Boston, and moved here. It was pretty much a no-gi exclusive school at the time because there just weren't a lot of people in the Valley, and it's an easier, lower barrier of entry is no-gi. And then Ernest kind of switched us over to a gi school. So I kind of, being the only school within 50 miles, I had no choice. And I started doing it, and I didn't like it for a couple of weeks. And then the craziest thing happened is, like somebody snapped their fingers. Now I vastly prefer gi to no gi. Like if I go to competition, most of the time I'll just focus on the gi part of the competition. Even I really enjoy how it changes the way I have to think about things. And I have to be a little more patient, and you have to back out a lot more and restart your attack. And the things that used to frustrate me, I actually I find interesting. You're working for something, and then they get a good grip. You're like, all right, well, now I got to back out, move the grip and try another approach. And I like the freshness of it. So now I think 90% of my training is gi at this point. I think the only time I really train no gi is if I'm traveling and the whole of my schedule happens to be at a no gi class. But I've gone full on nerd about it. I think at this point I have 12 gi. I really dove in. I had to eventually put a moratorium on new gis because I was getting out of hand. So yeah, I don't know what happened, but something triggered in my brain, and now I just really like it. Until I'm getting choked with my own lapel, then I think, what have I done? But outside of that,
what is this cloth around my neck?
Exactly.
That's interesting. So, just talking more about your story, and I think the listeners could try to bring this into their own stories. Was the head and arm choke one of your earlier techniques that you really liked?
No, actually, it wasn't.
Because I think hearing this, that technique is a bit easier without the gi, I think.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So maybe that adds a little bit of light to your no gi game.
Because I think at this point I've only recently started to figure out kind of what I like and what my game is.
Yeah.
For the first several years, I went through a phase where I really liked Kimura, and I thought, all right, I guess Kimura is my thing. And then I kind of moved on, I tried different things, and they seemed like they worked for a little bit, but then it kind of stopped working. So the head and arm is just over the last few years, it seems like that's the one that I can make happen a lot. Probably started because I was rolling with a guy that a friend of mine in Dallas, and he's just masterful at digging out your arm with his head, and he just nailed it repeatedly on me, and he just made it look so easy that I kind of thought I'm gonna try this one, and because it frustrated me to no end, and I think it was probably because of him just abusing me with it that I got better at it. Now I really like it. I don't know what that says about me as a personality, but that's what my first introduction was. This he's a big guy, and him just crushing me with it.
I think we all have, if you've trained for a little while, you've got a similar technique in your arsenal where something worked well against you and that somehow buys it a ton of credibility, how great that technique is. You can't stop it. The guy, it's easy for him to do. Like, okay, this is a good move because it's working on me. And then you get that passion behind it. There was a lapel choke that I saw at a tournament back in the blue belt days, and this guy choked everybody with it. He armbarred me, but other than that, he choked everybody with his lapel choke, and I became fascinated by that choke, and I studied it and I drilled it, and it was one of my best chokes for a long time. And I think that just having something like proven to you that this works, and you feel it, and you like that's. I think that's a really common thing that. All the techniques work, but when one of them works really well against you, I think you respect it a little bit more.
Hey, you know what? You're right. It's almost like a book recommendation. You know, if there's a million books out there, how do you pick which one to read? You know, there's a million jiu-jitsu moves out there. How do you pick which one? If it has some kind of positive connotation that elevates it above the crowd of all the submissions, that does give it a little bit more wind in its sails to become something you like doing. I think that's a great point. I'd never really thought of it like that. Huh. I like that.
Yeah. I think if you think back, and all the listeners, I recommend you as well, think back of maybe some of your favorite moves and how we get shown moves all the time. We're not lacking in the knowledge of what moves are out there. We're lacking in the knowledge of the like deep knowledge in a couple of moves, and we all have that. But why on those particular moves do you like those? And a lot of times it's because it's somebody did it to you, or it
gives it credibility for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about your app here that really. So I'll tell you my experience. I think that will help bring people on. So I've been looking for an app to log training. I have an app that I run with, and it keeps a little map, and it shows me where I run. It shows me how slow I run, and all that sort of things that I'm able to do. But I was like, man, it would be great for something for jiu-jitsu to log my training and what I'm working on, and who I'm training with, and you know how much time I'm getting rolling per week, and that sort of thing. And you know, I thought that would be really neat. A while ago, I kind of like. It wasn't out there, and people were using Evernote and that sort of thing to keep notes and log training and that sort of thing. But you created the Marune app, and from my experience, I guess I said I'd tell my story. I downloaded it, and I started logging some trainings and opening it up, and I think it's fun to log a picture with your training. So I try to do that when I remember. If I remember while I'm at the gym, I'll get a picture. That's fun. If I forget and I remember while I'm at home, I'll just put how long I trained and what I trained and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I was doing. And then we mentioned it on the podcast a while ago, and suddenly the app became more of for me personally, more of a jiu-jitsu social network that I can log my training on. I really enjoy seeing other people train. I see those pictures, or I see that they're training and how much they're rolling and what they're working on, and supporting people out there. So it kind of turned, like I'd open I guess it changed the reason why I was opening the app. The first while I was opening the app to log my training, I still do that. But now I'm opening the app just midday, and instead of checking Facebook, now I like to check the app because it's all jiu-jitsu related, and it's see people out there and see what they're up to and who they're training with and that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun to get on there, and I think that both are important to an app like this. But I think that there are days that I've trained that I was like, man, I got to train this week a little bit more. And because I can look on there, you haven't trained much this week, so get out there and log something. It's been a positive force for my jiu-jitsu for sure.
I'm glad to hear that.
That's a little bit of my experience. So the app is called Marune. Tell us a little bit behind the name. How did you come up with that name?
So the name comes. It's I'm from a town in Florida called Tarpon Springs, and like most people, I love my hometown. I think it's a great little town with all its quirks, and I was trying to come up with some way to just kind of give a shout out to where I'm from. Tarpon's got two unique things about it. One is it's the largest concentration of Greeks outside of Greece in the world. And two, it's the sponge capital of the world. And trying to think, you really can't do much with sponge. Our high school mascot was the Spongers, and everybody called it Spongers, or, there's just not a lot you can do with that. And, Greek being what it is with the movies like 300 and the Spartan, every derivation of a cool Greek word meaning has been used somewhere. But our school colors are maroon and white. And so I picked up on the maroon, messed with the spelling a little bit, and just thought it kind of sounded neat, and it just made me smile a little bit because, when this first started as an idea, I had no idea if this would just be, my mom and dad downloading it, and that was kind of it. So I thought I may as well have a little fun with it, and just for my own sense of, makes me smile. So I named it Marune. And that's the origin story of the name. And
so it's spelled Marune. If you're,
yes.
And I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But all you got to do is type that up in iTunes or on the Google Play Store, and it'll pop right up. But it's to me, looking at the logo, it looks like kind of like a set of mountains, like two mountains. Is that what I'm seeing? It's a little bit, I don't know, cryptic. It's a creative logo as far as I'm not sure on what I'm seeing here. What's the logo on the Marune app?
So it's supposed to be representative of several things. One, looking slightly like an M for maroon.
Okay.
And the mountains, I live in Colorado now. And so that was, certainly in my mind when I was kind of going over logos. And I liked it because I felt like it applied to the jiu-jitsu journey in that, you kind of climb the mountain, which is hard, one face of the mountain, and you're working and it's a struggle, but you're feeling good about yourself and you kind of get that peak and it looks great. And then, next thing you know, you're kind of tumbling down the other side. Moves aren't working. You're getting tapped by lower belts. Your brain just not seeing things you felt like you saw crystal clear 4 weeks ago. And you kind of get down there and you get in a little valley where you're just feeling kind of crappy, but then you pick back up, you start climbing up again, things start clicking a little better. But this time, that's the reason why one side is a little lower than the other is when you climb up, you go up a little higher the next time because you've got a bigger base to work from. So without getting too kind of, philosophical about it, I like the way that kind of played into, at least how my jiu-jitsu journey has gone with kind of peaks and valleys, but, the peaks seem to be getting a little higher and the valleys getting a little shallower. So I thought, that works on a couple of levels. And I was feeling really good about the logo until I showed it to Katie and she thought it looked like an elephant. What to do with that? I was like, oh, I didn't see that at all. But once you see it, it looks almost like you're looking head on at an elephant, and it's hard not to see. And so I've been desperate to figure out how I can make that relate to jiu-jitsu other than, like the elephant represents the 1,000-kilo pressure. I'm really struggling because you know what? She's right. It does kind of look like an elephant. But anyway, so that became our running joke internally between Katie, how's the elephant app going? But anyway, so I guess at this point it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
That's funny, and I would have never thought of elephant. It takes people see things differently, but now that you say that, I definitely could see the M in there, and an elephant that's facing you. Yeah,
kind of coming down the middle. It's there. It's she's right. But she has an art background, so I think she was able to see that, where I didn't see it at all.
That's funny. It's people are listening to the podcast. They're driving. They're out doing things. They're busy or whatever. but if you get a chance to just go pull this up, look at the logo. It's you can see all three of the things in there. To me, the easiest thing is in the mountains. It clearly looks like two mountains with a valley between them, and that makes perfect sense. We all experience that. You leave one day, you feel great, and then next time you go train, like, man, I did not have it. that's all that happens a lot. Yeah. And so that's the flow, and like you described, you want your peaks to kind of get higher as you go, and your valleys will rise with them as you continue to progress. But the M, I can see the M. I didn't really think about that, and the elephant, I could have had this at my phone for years and not seen that elephant looking right at me.
Right? Yeah. Everybody I showed you besides Katie, nobody pointed out, but she spotted it right away. And the worst is, I told her she was nuts because I didn't see it, because I was thinking of an elephant sideways. Like, that's how far off I was from seeing it. And she's like, no, it's looking at you. And so I was she was just miles ahead of me on that.
Yeah.
But I'm used to that with her anyway, so that worked out.
That's funny. So I described the app a little bit from my perspective. Tell me, you describe the app and tell me what you want it to do and what it does.
So these things are hard to, so I had a lot of ideas of what I wanted the app to be, I wanted something that I could log my training that looked good. I'm not really people use Evernote. I tried using like paper and pencil, like the college composition thing, and nothing was really taking, because, even though I'm 48, I am used to everything on my phone these days. It's just, if I'm sitting somewhere, just plinking around. And so I felt like it needed to be something that you would have with you all the time, that you could use as a training log, that, I could see, okay, wow, I haven't gone for a couple of days and, or a couple of weeks, and I can see that, my numbers are coming down. But I also liked the idea of it being something a little bit more than just a static training log. Because I noticed in my own experience, when I travel for work, I try to find a new school to go train. And then living here in Colorado, it's kind of a tourist state. So we get a lot of people coming through our school that they take pictures and, they train. So some way of also keeping track of that was kind of took into what I consider the culture of jiu-jitsu, which is very much a traveling culture. It seems like people are always looking at new schools or traveling around, the best they can and trying, and visiting new places. So I want something that incorporated both of that in a way to keep track of people I met with for the jiu-jitsu, maybe at a tournament or at a seminar or a camp, that they were, we knew jiu-jitsu and we talked about it. We had a lot of great conversations around it, but not really kind of at the face, not really Facebook level. And I don't want that to sound pejorative, but, I don't need to know everything at all about them in the kind of the Facebook aspect. It was, these are my jiu-jitsu friends, and that's our common bond, and that's what we like to talk about. And as a way of keeping track with people, I've met people at tournaments, and even though we go hard for however long it takes, afterwards we're talking about the techniques, we're laughing. That's probably because I'm at a master's level, so nobody's trying to kill each other. It's much more friendly. But how to keep track of these guys and people I meet. So I wanted that incorporated into that as well. And so it just seemed like kind of doing is a big bite, a training log and social media app. But that's what I wanted out of it. And that's what I like out of jiu-jitsu. I like that, the reward of training and seeing myself grow, but I also like meeting people. But how to start it, it leaned much more towards the training log, because I felt like that's more people are interested in the training log part, some way of keeping track of it, and then slowly build into like the social aspect of it, which is why, for example, comments came so late in the game. It's a chicken or egg kind of thing. If you start with just a social network, there's no social networks, nobody uses it. At least people will go into a training log kind of every day and log their training. And maybe then it'll start to take root with talking to other people or, getting what you said. And I don't want to go on too long here, but your experience seems to mirror at least what it's showing on the trends. 3 months ago, the average user was on it for, 40 seconds. And now people are on it for 2.5 minutes at a time, which means people are exploring what their friends are doing. And it's people are spending more time. They're I don't know if appreciate is the right word, but they're getting into what this can do with the combination of those two things.
Yeah, and spending more time on there, I definitely have spent more time this month than last month, because I'm scrolling through that feed of what people are doing and training, and then the comments thing is really cool because I'm able to give a little bit of support here or there, or get some from somebody else. Like I noticed one guy typed literally like almost a page of notes about his training. Like, this is amazing. I just commented, "You take really good notes," and he commented on that, and I thought that was neat. And one guy posted that tournament that so you have an option of logging a tournament or training, and he logged a tournament, and it didn't go so well. And I commented on, "Hey, we've all had tournaments like that," and he commented on that. I mean, I think it's just a way to be supportive of each other, and celebrate the good, and identify with the negative or the hard lessons learned. And for me, the people that have me on Facebook, I don't post, I trained today at Jiu-Jitsu, which a lot of people do post that, and that's fine by me. I don't think about it. I don't care to share that with, several hundred of my friends that don't train. Like, it just doesn't occur to me to post daily things about anything, let alone Jiu-Jitsu, which is normal for me. I understand if you're new and you're excited about every training session is the next biggest thing, you post that, and that's cool. But I'm more than happy to post it on here, and everybody who sees it will be training Jiu-Jitsu, and it's just like it's a more targeted social area, and I feel like it's where I belong as far as where it's targeting, and I feel like I don't want this to be a commercial. It's not a commercial. Jason's not paying me to be on here. I just like the app, and I want it to do well, and I think that's that. I think it's a great app, and I'm surprised by how much I like it beyond logging. I know there's a lot of value in logging your training, tracking it, finding trends in what you're doing, and that sort of thing. But it's just also fun. And so you're doing great, Jason.
It's funny how usage evolves. I had how I thought I would use it when I was making the app. And it's one of the things I find that I use it a lot more than I thought, is if I'm traveling on business or if I'm on vacation, checking in with the people that are training at my school to see, who's training, what are they training, looking at pictures. I feel like I'm still there and I'm not as out of the loop. And I never would have thought that's something that I would get a lot of pleasure from when I was thinking, how am I going to use this app? It's, just when I'm not at the school keeping track of what's going on. It's just really fun to see the pictures and see the techniques people are learning from, when I'm not there. So it's to me, it's just interesting how it kind of just keeps changing.
That's cool. That's kind of where the app is now. What do you have vision for it in the future?
So I've got, I mentioned earlier, I've got pages and pages, and where I'd like to go next, there are a couple of big things, 2 small and 1 big. I'd like to get, I mentioned I've really leaned into the gi nerdiness, and so I want to put in a way of keeping track of all your gis and how often you're using them. One, just to, as a place just to kind of so you can see, maybe it susses out what your favorite gi is, what your lucky gi is. But I also think it can start to tell people how long gis are lasting, because you can actually, I want to be able to track the hours with each gi, so you can see, oh, wow, I spent a lot for gi X, but it just didn't last that long. Or I didn't spend hardly anything on that gi, and that thing's lasted forever. Just kind of give people myself just a sense of what the gis look like. And then, because this is a weight-based sport, I want to put a weight tracker in there where people can kind of check in on their weight. And that's what I'm looking at, hopefully with this next iteration. But what I'd like to go, and I don't know how long it'll take to really roll out, because it's going to take quite a bit of thought, so I don't know where in the calendar it'll actually fit, is kind of a page for schools, where schools can have, belt promotion announcements, barbecues, seminars coming through, kind of whatever, but have a place for schools to be able to have their own groups. But that's that's going to be a big one. So that may take a few, there might be some smaller updates before that one's really ready to come out. But that's kind of the big plan. The next really big offering will be one for schools. Again, just so long as people are using it, if it kind of falls off the cliff and people keep using, then the experiment will have failed. But if it's growing and people are using it, then that's, I've got page after page of some are small, some are big of things I want to add. Ranks for juniors has been a very common request. So that'll probably be coming pretty soon. Just things like that. And user requests, I get them all the time, and I write them down, and, just to see what's out there that I haven't thought about.
And you have it, like when I go train, I put where I trained at, and then it finds it on Google Maps, or I don't know how all that stuff works. But does the school have any idea that I did that?
No, the school does not know that, and I'd like to change that in the school so maybe it's a check-in so people can know who's coming. And with that, with the school page, I'm hoping that people will announce their open mats, and so it becomes sort of an open mat finder as well. To give the community, a place to look for open mats, or, seminars maybe they haven't heard of that, somebody's coming through their town at a different school. Maybe you want to pop over and catch that seminar. So I, not really sure how it's all going to fit together, but that's the looseness. But it would be neat if the school could know, who's there and who's not. But that gets,
it's like a whole different category. I mean,
it's a different category, and I always worry about privacy, so I want to make sure that we're not, kind of getting too much. But I don't know that really will. I just got to sit with that a little bit and kind of see, because the last thing that I want Marune to be is some kind of weird app that stalks people, and so, well, I just don't care what people are doing in their off time. You know what I mean? So I don't like it when things are stalking me. So I want to extend that to everybody else. So I've had a lot of good ideas come through, but they just feel a little, I don't know. I just sit with them and see how I think it fits.
That's, you hear the quote, like, don't just stand there, do something. And I've also heard the quote in the opposite when it comes to like thinking about an idea. Don't do something, just stand there. Like, I like that because you're not making wild changes on a whim. Like, think about it, sit with it. It's going to affect the people it's going to affect your users. It's going to change some things. Think about it, sit with it, and then also, you're not some giant, company or whatever. Like, if people start complaining about things, like, okay, that was actually a bad idea, let's take that out. Like, things could be changed, but you seem like a pretty open guy as far as receiving feedback, and you want positive experiences with this, and I think that's what you're doing now, and I think that's what you'll do in the future wherever you take it.
Every email gets to me, so that's the good news. And people, it's great because people bring up things like a suggestion on instructor hours, and I'm a blue belt, so I never thought, even in my wildest imagination, that somebody would want to track the amount of time they've been an instructor, and I thought it was just a fantastic idea.
Wow.
And so, but again, like, I would just never thought of that.
Yeah.
So that went on the paper, and it's, I'll try to figure out when I can. When that'll make an update somewhere along the line. But I think it's just a really, and I get those all the time, just really, really good ideas I'd never thought about. Because, I don't know, certainly I'm no great genius. I don't know everything. I'm just kind of plucking along,
Yeah, I also would not have thought of that. That's cool. And so that would just, like when you go to log something, you either pick, right now it's tournament, competition, or it's training, and so literally it'd be one more thing. Instructing would be an option you could put on there. That's a great idea.
I think it's a good idea. A lot of it is with ideas. There are a lot of great ideas, but I like the aesthetic of the app where it's kind of simple and it flows.
Yeah.
And so I've had some ideas that I think are interesting, but I can't figure out how to do it without getting things too cumbersome. And so a lot there's the privacy balance. And then there's also kind of the fire hose versus simplicity balance, and where you want to give a lot of user interaction that people like without cluttering it up or making it so hard to get to the thing that you're looking for. And I think sometimes that means maybe you don't include things.
Yeah.
It's kind of that addition by subtraction, but that's super hard to kind of figure out.
Yeah. To pull, you don't want to have like, you could also do things like log your seminar, log your this or that. Like you could have a whole bunch of different categories, log your YouTube watching or podcast list. I don't know, whatever it would be. Okay. That's way too much stuff, but you're finding that balance and you're experimenting with it. That's cool. That's how that's what we work on jiu-jitsu. You got to experiment a little bit and think about it and try it out and, decide whether it's right or wrong.
You got to get comfortable. Like I've had to get comfortable with, it's just not going to be all things to all people, and that's hard because I want everybody to like it and love it and think nailed it. But, it's sort of like you said it's like you said, jiu-jitsu, like, not every move is going to work for everybody, so figure out what does.
Jason, I don't have a lot of people on here that make apps or like a successful social media or a training app or whatever. This is kind of a new territory. Can you think of anything that you learned in this process that you could relate to jiu-jitsu?
In some ways, it certainly the learning curve is similar, and the kind of when it first kind of came out, I get 1 user, 2 user like downloads a day, and you just start to wonder. It feels like you're getting your butt kicked, sort of like when you first started as a white belt, and nothing's coming together for you. And, you get some upticks, you feel good, and then you get a drop where it drops back down. So it is kind of similar in that, you need patience when you're rolling something like this out. And certainly with where our user base is, I'm really happy, but it's also, man, there's a long way to go before it gets to be, I think even a blip on anybody's kind of radar screen. So it's that same process of you show up, and it's one foot in front of the other, and you keep doing things in hopes that it's going to get better. But I don't know anything at all about coding, and so it's that same kind of when I talk to the people that are developing it, trusting them that they've got my best interest at heart, the app's best interest, and kind of going along with what they're doing. Much like when you're starting out, you're getting feedback from your professor, you're taking that. Look, he's got your best interest at heart. Do it this way, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense. Trust us, this will work better. And so it's that kind of, as weird as it sounds, it's that same, put your ego aside a little bit and let things kind of take root as they are going to take root, with the fits and the starts and the frustrations that go with it, and just not trying to get too attached to this is the best thing no matter what, because when people say something bad about Marune, it's hard for me not to get defensive, but you just got to kind of put your ego aside and say, okay, well, what can I do to make it better? I don't know if that was long-winded or not, but I find that serenity of jiu-jitsu kind of helps with this. If anything, I appreciate jiu-jitsu more because it's one more thing I get to get away from the frustrations in dealing with when I go to jiu-jitsu is kind of the ups and downs of starting an app, because it's not very smooth. It's not linear at all.
Yeah, that's. We were talking a little bit before the interview, and we have an app for the podcast. I was telling you about that. It was made by the company who hosts the podcast. I just had to basically order it and send them my logo, and they did all the work. Like, you're actually figuring, let's do this, and then talking with people and meeting and doing all these things, and it sounds like a lot of work, Jason. What do you do when you're not developing an app or training jiu-jitsu?
So I work in finance. I work for a company called Ranger Capital. It's based out of Dallas. So that's the job part of my life. And the other part of my life is, I live up here in Colorado. I've got, my wife, Katie. We have a son, my son, who's just went to college. We have a dog, Summit. And when I'm not training jiu-jitsu, working on apps or working, we're spending a lot of time just up here, just enjoying the mountain life.
What school do you train at?
It's Aspen MMA.
Okay.
The professor's Ernest Mendez.
Cool. And we'll put links to that. I always like to put links to people's gyms. It helps a little bit with the Google. And if somebody wants to come come find you and train with you. You could, A, you could train with the app, and B, you could put it on the app and log it.
If you're up in the Western Rockies, please look us up. We're a small school, but we're real chill, and it's just a friendly environment. So, real open to everybody.
That's what I look for when I go train. It's just some place that I'm going to enjoy the training experience. I don't necessarily seek out like the biggest, toughest gyms around. I want to get some mat time, want to meet a few people, and experience a little bit different place that I'm used to. And yeah, it sounds perfect. Well, Jason, as we're kind of coming to an end on our time that we have scheduled here, whether somebody uses an app or not, there is a ton of value in keeping track of your training. It takes it from just like go train and get good at jiu-jitsu to making it more of a scientific thing, to where you're seeing your areas of weakness. You're seeing where you work a lot on. Like, we all have a feeling, you prefer to pass than to play guard, but you can look at the end of the, at your training log and see, you know what, I played zero guard, or I trained zero guard techniques the whole month. That's not balanced. I need to work on that. So I just think the idea of logging your training or taking notes, that's a form of logging training as well, is so valuable. It takes it from, it makes it more of a scientific process, and that's going to help us get better at a faster rate. And this is actually an enjoyable way to do that, which I've never really been able to experience. Anything I've ever logged, it's just been, I better go do this. It's going to help me. This is actually pretty fun.
Yeah, it shouldn't feel like homework, right?
Yeah, you don't want that homeworky feeling. You want that fun thing. That's perfect. So I appreciate you hopping on here with me. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Man, I wanted to thank Jason for hopping on the podcast and talking with us about the app. Of course, he wants to get in here and talk about it. But I'm just, he's not paying for this spot. This is me getting the app and really liking the app and wanting to share this with you guys. I think this is a great training tool. It's absolutely free. It's fun to track your training. Finally, somebody has made, tracking your training an enjoyable process. And I really appreciate what he's doing. It's great. And I think part of the best part is for us. We have this podcast where people kind of connect with us, and most of the people I have on the Marune app are podcast listeners. They get on there, they find us, and they add us, and then we get to see you guys train. You get to see me when I'm training and what's going on. It just makes it more fun. It just adds another dimension to your training of enjoyment. So get on there and find us. Just type in BjjBrick. We should pop right up. So, and there's a link in the show notes if you haven't got the app yet. I highly recommend it. If anything, if you don't like it, delete it, but try it for a week or two and see how it treats you. I would say a whole month, because then you could see your month-end training results, and that's kind of neat as well. Okay, this week we have an article. It's at the www.bjj/spot about Japanese traditional jiu-jitsu versus Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and it goes on to talk about the differences between Japanese jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and yeah, it's not really, I wouldn't say like the idea of Japanese jiu-jitsu versus Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's more of a comparison, like in the traditional sense of like four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive, or like comparing the two different things and what they are. It's not, you get a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy to take on a Japanese jiu-jitsu guy, not the combat sports versus type. Really, just a comparison versus, of two things. I meant comparison. Yeah, that's what that's what we're looking at here, and that's something that a lot of people, I think, us included, and probably most of the audience, is interested in one martial art, and that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We obviously have practitioners out there and listeners that have come from other martial arts, or that have found interest in other martial arts and either train Jiu-Jitsu or split time between one or the other, and that's great. But us three here are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people or no-gi people, and that's basically, to me, that's the same thing. It's just a little different rules or different uniform. But I don't really know a whole lot about Japanese jiu-jitsu, so this was a learning experience for me.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting article. And so the author starts out with just looking at the two arts kind of separate of each other, and he looks at Japanese jiu-jitsu first. And One of his points about Japanese jiu-jitsu is that it's largely trained in a one-step sparring type of scenario with not as much aliveness as Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that's probably true. But I did go watch some YouTube videos about Japanese jiu-jitsu, and one of the ones I watched was the yellow belt test. It was 3 guys testing for the yellow belt, which is not the second belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu, it's the third. And there are 9 belts in Japanese jiu-jitsu, so the yellow belt would be somewhere around blue belt level if you were comparing the 2 arts. And there was a large focus on, you grab my collar, I break the grip, I elbow you, I do a throw, that kind of self-defense kind of thing. But at the end of it, there was a period where each of the 3 guys grappled with each other. And I got to say that they looked like decent 3 or 4 stripe white belts. They looked like guys in jiu-jitsu that might be closing in on their blue belt. So, and that was just ground fighting. So it's obvious that at least this particular school does some live full grappling. So that was good to see. I would also say that the guy made a point about it being more self-defense orientated, and I couldn't disagree with that. It seems to be focused on that, how to stop a guy from beating you up kind of thing. So interesting.
But that there are still a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools, and a lot of people think that the self-defense has left Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too. So some schools really do focus on that more than others. And I don't know much about Japanese Jiu-Jitsu either. This was kind of like my first time really reading about it. And I wonder too about, you were talking about the grappling portion of it, the sparring part, Joe. I wonder, because Byron, do we even have a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu school in town? I don't think I've ever seen one.
Upon reading this article, I didn't gain I got to go try this. But I thought, you know what? Time for me is a premium in training time. If I get to train 4 times a week, that's great. But I thought, well, what would it be like if I just took one of those training times of the 4 this whole year and went one time to see what this was? And there's not one. I type in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu in Wichita, Kansas, and a bunch of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools pop up. Okay.
Because I would really like to see you practice and even go into a class and join it just to really see what it is, firsthand. I just think it would be neat, and we're only going to get better learning other stuff too. Like, I guarantee you there's stuff I can learn from Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Joe, before we got on air, we were talking about Hapkido, stuff I can learn from these other arts that is going to make me a better overall martial artist. And, the more knowledge I can get, as Joe has already said, I'm probably one of the brightest guys he's ever met in his life. And he's met a lot of people like Stephen Hawking and stuff. But, Joe did say I was the smartest one.
Yeah, but when I rolled with Stephen Hawking, he gave me a better roll than Cat when I rolled.
Nice.
I'm just kidding.
I think that would be an interesting concept, is to go try out a Japanese school. And there's the wrong way and a right way to do this. The wrong way would be to go in there and tap everybody out and let them know that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is going to be the best thing ever. The right way is to go in as a student, let them know, yes, I've trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 2 months or 18 years or whatever it is, and I'm interested in see what Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is, and then just take the class like a student. Yeah. There's no need to prove anything, or to go in there with open eyes and for the experience of what is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and get a little bit of that experience. Same thing if you go to a judo class. If you're in judo class, you're pulling guard, trying to sweep people, you're not doing judo anymore. You might as well just go to jiu-jitsu class.
So one thing I took away from reading this article and watching a few YouTube videos or reading a few other articles, I don't know if I would find a lot of value in just dropping into a traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu school. It seems the training methodology is so much different that, one class might not be all that beneficial. But I did kind of come away with it with the idea that if I were to relocate to a small town and Japanese jiu-jitsu was my only option, I would go to that school. I didn't see anything about this that would lead me to believe it's something that I couldn't get something out of or that I wouldn't enjoy. I would certainly prefer a jiu-jitsu school like the ones I train at today. But if this was my only option, I would definitely train this way.
Yeah, I agree. And part of the article it says, at the very least, we must mention there are a lot of similarities between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Both of these martial arts use locks, pins, and chokes, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes as a descendant of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. The word Jiu-Jitsu is not a Portuguese or Brazilian word. So I do think that the biggest difference is how we train. It's not necessarily the techniques, but it's our sparring time. It's our training time is different from what I've seen. And I'm sure there are Japanese Jiu-Jitsu gyms who train a lot like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms, and I know that there are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms who don't really roll very much and spar very hard. So I'm not saying this in absolutes, but in general, I think you're going to get more mat time or rolling time in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym. And, if a class is an hour long, I guess you'd get more technique time in a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu gym based on, only have so much time, a percentage of time to divvy up. And if 80% of that's technique and 0% of it's rolling, you're going to get more technique time. But, yeah, it's just interesting. And I, as long as we've been doing this, I'm largely ignorant of really what Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is, and I think this was a good article to just shed some light on that. I think also we could have done a similar topic as Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. What is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? That's a brand. It's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a brand of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that they have their name on, and they incorporate self-defense. You're not going to a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu tournament at IBJJF events. You're going to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. And I think some people kind of get those mixed up a little bit.
Yeah, good point. I don't know if we mentioned, but this article is on BJJ Spot. I think Byron did mention that. But if you go there and read the article, there's a link I just noticed below the article, Wrestling versus BJJ. And again, it's not wrestlers versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, but it's comparing the two differences. So between this article and that one, you can learn a little bit more about the different styles of grappling and how they compare with each other.
I just clicked over to that, and there is a big difference between professional WWE wrestling and jiu-jitsu, which I really didn't know. I've tried figure four leg locks and been disqualified. I've tried leg drops and elbow smashes, and I didn't understand why people were upset about that, but now I do.
You've always been confused by the reaction of the crowd and the judges when you got a chair out, right? It's a legitimate technique.
I saw it on TV.
He tries to tag out usually.
I try to, yeah. But the bad thing is my partner is normally Byron, and he's afraid to get in there.
I ain't getting in there. No way. That guy's going to smell like Gary. With the idea of the brand of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, what would it be like to have a brand of Brick Jiu-Jitsu? How bad of a brand would that be?
Yeah, especially like we make the gi out of bricks. I think there's a lot of stuff we could do with this.
Probably irritate my skin. I don't have the most sensitive of skin, but when it comes to wearing bricks as clothing, my skin is not usually happy.
Have you tried it?
And my muscles get tired quickly for some reason.
But then we could build your muscles up. See, that's the positive. See, you're thinking negatively, Byron.
I am thinking negatively.
We need to change that around. We're going to have some defeats in life. We need to get better each and every day, and we could do that by wearing clothes made out of bricks.
Maybe your submission could be like a brick, like a basketball. When you shoot the basket, every time they say it's a brick, that shoot.
Gary's got no idea what that is, right? You don't throw up any bricks.
Oh, I do now.
No, a brick is a good technique that you could rely on. We don't ever talk about that anymore.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, Byron, I was talking to one of my training partners the other day, and I was like, man, you got a really good game, but you need a brick. And he's like, huh? And I was like, like you said, we don't talk about it as much anymore. But, I just look at it that, my brick is the Kimura. And
yes, it is.
Anytime, I'm in doubt or I don't know, I may be in danger or whatever, I like to go back to my move that is my number one move. And it's the Kimura. I love having a brick.
Yep, and you might have different bricks in different positions, or maybe
Yep.
work on different things as time goes. But the concept, I think, is very helpful.
So, guys, I got a question for you. It's sort of on a personal note, but
No, Joe, I
take
don't
the pills,
wear
not the cream.
Yeah, and I don't wear the underwear of the month every day.
not every day,
Won't-
every other
and
day.
I won't send you pictures either.
All right, well, let's drag it on the mat. How about that?
Thank you, Joe.
So I thought about this question posing it to Gary, because you're kind of a footlock guy, but Byron's been around a long time. I'm sure he's got some input as well. But I have not been a footlock guy. And twice, though, in the last year, I've been to seminars that are focused on footlocks. The most recent one was when I was up with you guys and Rolly Delgado came in and did his straight ankle lock series.
What was that event called?
Omoplata-palooza?
I don't know.
Or the BjjBrick event.
Something like that. Anyway, it was a good time. It was good to see you guys. Good to see Jake and Rolly and Tim and everybody else who was there. But after that event, I thought, you know what? I need to add this to my game, at least a better familiarization with it. And I thought, how am I going to get to the foot? You know, what kind of things happen when I'm playing jiu-jitsu that would get me there? And the first thing that occurred to me is that when my opponent stands up in my guard, at one of the schools I go to, we routinely do a drill where your opponent does a standing guard break and you switch to De La Riva, and then you kind of go through a number of open guards, and it's sort of just a flow drill. And I thought, you know, going from the De La Riva to the single leg X is not too difficult. It's something that seems like I can do. It comes natural to me. And so I thought I'd start there. But what I soon found was that, I guess because it's two right-handed grapplers, it's what I drill most of the time, that what usually ends up happening is my opponent kind of presents his right foot. So I capture his right foot, his right ankle, and I do the De La Riva hook with my left leg. But every time that I drill the straight ankle lock, it's always with my right arm, which kind of makes sense because when I do a guillotine, I usually put my opponent's head to my right side and I guillotine with my right arm. When I do a Kimura, it's always on that side. So that's the side that's comfortable for me. So I think the answer long term is that I become amphibious and I can do this on land or on water. Or I become ambidextrous and I can attack either foot.
I'll stick with amphibious.
But my question for you is, Gary, in the short term, or the first step to start, since my opponent is presenting his right foot with my left hand, should I start learning to do the straight ankle lock on that side, or should the first step be to manipulate my opponent so I can get the foot I want?
You know, that's a good question, Joe. And I don't know. I think what I would do if that guy's giving it to you, I would learn to do it from what is given to me. You know, I think the most important, and this is my thing. I mean, Rolly, you know, is an expert. I'm not. But I would think, you know, I'm going to, first of all, I look at this as the land of opportunity. I'm taking what is given to me. I'm looking for that low-hanging fruit. And if it's going to be given to me on one side, I'm probably just going to go for that first. And I kind of look at it as steps. Like, you know, I'm going to take what's given to me first, and I'm going to get really good at getting the single leg X, the Ashigurami, getting in correct position and finishing that way. Finishing with what's given to me, you know, the step that way. As I get better, then I'm going to look for some different, you know, entries where, you know, I can pick up the other leg or however I want it. But, you know, I'm going to take what's easiest, what's right in front of me. I can think of when I first started doing the single leg X to ankle lock, you know, which I learned from Rolly Delgado's legal leg locks. That was the first one. You know, that was my beginning of every leg lock that I've ever done. And, you know, I've been through, I think now 3 of his seminars, and I've learned so much from it. But I just started out on one side. I like to, like what you said, Joe, I like to ankle lock with my left hand. That's what I guillotine with my left hand. And that really helped me a lot. And you know, I would take what was given to me off the bat. I now have some entries which really help me out a lot. But for the first few years, really everything was done just on that with that left hand. I wasn't amphibious, as you said. I just would attack with my left hand, and then that was it. And the good thing, and I don't know if you can call this good for my training partner, but he hurt that would be his right knee. So I was taking his left leg, or his right knee. So I was taking his right leg with my left hand. So my main training partner. So then I had to start attacking his leg with his other side, and now I'm not as good attacking with my right arm, but I'm getting there.
Are you left-handed, Gary?
I am left-handed. Yep.
Oh, okay, so that's why you attack to that side.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. I'm an odd duck.
Okay. How about you, Byron? What's your answer?
I would say stick with what's most enjoyable. With anything that you're trying to add that's not like highly successful at first, could easily get dropped, and you just move on to the next shiny thing that might work for you. I guillotine almost always with my right hand. I omoplata both sides. I used to do a lot of triangle chokes both sides. I armbar both sides.
He dates both ways.
I think it's...
Don't tell his wife. It's still secret.
There's just so many more options to be able to attack both sides. But if all that's presented to you is your trouble side, maybe find a new way to get there. Some of my better leg, like attacking the ankle setups, are off of a knee bar attempt that I'm not real serious on getting, because I get a knee bar attempt from several places, and then they escape that, and I'm now attacking the foot. I think that's maybe just finding different ways other than the idea of your daily Hiva setting up for this. Maybe there's a place from half guard you can get to it from. Maybe it's more of a thing you develop as a guard passer. Once you get it, you're going to have it from a lot of places. Like, the ideas are the same. It's the same thing with guillotines. I like to guillotine from my guard. I like to guillotine from half guard top. I like to guillotine from side control top, from mount top. I see guillotines in a lot of places, but I had to develop my guillotine from my guard. If I'd have started developing from half guard, I'd have got swept too many times. I would have let it go. And so find a spot where you can get to it and access it and put some work on it, and then it should open up many other doors.
I like that, Byron. I think that's great what you said, especially right off the start about what's enjoyable. And then you talked about
not your teammates.
Yeah. No, but if you're not getting it, then you go on to the shiny new toy. And, I do see that happen a lot. It doesn't work. And I've tried stuff. For some reason, it doesn't work. And, one thing that I always thought was helpful, and I'm just going to throw Byron out there, because Byron, you were talking about leg locks one day, and I remember one Saturday, all we did was we presented our legs to each other, and we rolled about 60%. And we were giving each other options to get in there. I wasn't fighting you to not get my leg. You weren't fighting me to not get my leg. And stuff like that has really helped me. Like, I remember telling you, Byron, I roll like that a lot with some of my training partners where, we have no ego. We're about learning. And we present ourselves in bad positions. We let people get us that way.
Gary, what you're saying is so helpful. I can't interrupt you, but when you say we presented our legs to each other, man, it's just hard to keep going, like, not call you out on saying that.
We put our legs on platters.
Well, thanks, guys.
What are you thinking, Joe? What are you thinking about your leg locks in the future? Is this something that you're real interested in, or you just know it's a weakness, or where do you want to go?
A little of both. And after thinking about this, I've been thinking about it a week or so, and listening to both of y'all's input. I think I'm going to go Gary's direction and take the leg that's presented, and partially for a couple reasons. One is because it's there. I see that opportunity a lot. And also because I don't Kimura to my left side. I don't guillotine to my left side. And maybe kind of attacking the ankle on that side will help me develop a little more dexterity and a little more proficiency and go in that direction. I've noticed that's a weakness, and there's a couple of places where it is really glaring. And one is I do a hip bump sweep sometimes to the right, And a perfect counter to that is a guillotine to the left, right? You go to hip up sweep, they drive into you, but I don't have a decent guillotine with my left arm. So maybe working this footlock on the left side will just help with dexterity overall and open some other things up in my game.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Joe. Hey, one thing I did want to mention real quick, and it was really good words of wisdom that I got last time Rolly was in town for the BjjBrick event. But, I'd been talking to him, and he's my hero on leg locks. I've learned so much from him. But I've also, learned stuff from Josh Hayden, has really helped my game. I have, checked out Nathan Orchard, who's really helped my leg lock game. And one thing that, when I was talking to Rolly about it, because I was telling him I was having good luck with the double outside ashi on a straight ankle lock. And, he made a really good point. And, I'm nowhere near a master in leg locks or anything, and I've not changed my focus a little bit, but Rolly said, he's like, man, really to get really good at it, just keep working, your basic single leg axe, your ashi, single leg ashi there, to ankle lock. And he's like, as you just get better and better at that, instead of looking at different ideas, I was thinking I was looking at too much shiny new material, like Byron was saying, instead of really just delving into, the single leg axe, going to an ankle lock and really just getting really, really good at that, making it a brick. And I can even think back to Joe, when you talked to Rolly before the event and you asked Rolly, hey, what should I work on? Is there anything that we could work on before this seminar to get more out of the seminar? And that was the thing he told you, was the, work on a single leg X. So now I've just, trying not to, go out of his system and just really trying to just stay in that system and just get so much better at it that, I can see every little nuisance. I can figure out every little thing and how to make everything tighter, more control and from those positions.
Yeah, I really like his focus on that, about really isolating that leg and taking away your opponent's ability to have any movement or any defense from that position. And brilliant.
We'll check up with you in a couple months, Joe, and let us know how it's going.
There you go. Yeah, we'll do that.
I like that. Not that Gary is assuming change is going to happen even within a week. Put some time in it. And, no, that's the way it is. That's reality. If you want to be good at leg locks, put a couple of months on it and see what happens. And I guarantee you'll be a lot better at leg locks in a couple of months. Yeah.
And Byron, you were the one who really got me in on that. I see so many people who work something for 2 practices a week, maybe a week and a half, and it's not working, and they throw it away and go to that shiny new toy. And one thing you always stressed to me early in my career was, hey, spend a couple weeks, spend a couple months, on this one move. And that's one thing that I've done from the very beginning. I may not have as many moves as other people, but I spend more time on a specific brick that I'm going to put in my brick bag.
Yep. It's that old master. What's a jack of all trades and master of none?
None. Yep.
Hey, so it's Thanksgiving this week. This episode will air on Monday, and Thanksgiving's on Thursday. So I thought this would be an appropriate time to talk about some things that we're thankful for. Byron, what has jiu-jitsu brought to your life that you're thankful for?
A more healthy lifestyle and some really great friends. And a lot of casual friends as well. I mean, they're all good, and a fun place to go after a long day or after a not so great day.
Yeah, I would agree. For me, a healthy lifestyle is key, but really it's about the friends. You get to be in your 40s and 50s, and I don't make friends easily. And jiu-jitsu has really brought a lot of great people in my life, and I like the diversity that it brings in my life as well. It seems like we gravitate towards people that are like us, but in jiu-jitsu, the thing we have in common is jiu-jitsu. And the friends that I make in jiu-jitsu, my political views, my social, my religious views are often quite different than the views of those that I become friends with in jiu-jitsu. So that is definitely one thing that I like about it.
All right. Just, hey, guys, send us some messages on Facebook or email. And what has jiu-jitsu done for you, or what are you thankful for about jiu-jitsu? We'd love to hear from you.
Yep, and happy Thanksgiving, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, you can take a day off of training, unless you get open. A lot of gyms have open mat on Thanksgiving morning.
Yep, have a turkey leg, have some cranberry sauce, and then go roll.
Guys, I've had a great week, and I want to thank our Patreon supporters. I want to thank Greg, Rob, and Brad for their continued support on Patreon. And what Greg, Rob, and Brad have done is they've listened to the show, they've enjoyed it, or they've got something out of it that's helped them. And they said, you know what? I want to support the BjjBrick podcast. So they continue to do this and even make it bigger and better. And they've gone to the link about Patreon in the show notes, or you could just go to Patreon and find us there. And most people pledge $1 per episode. If that's something that you can't afford, we would greatly appreciate it, and it would help us out a lot. And we mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch and a sticker as tokens of our appreciation. And if you're a Patreon supporter and you're not in the private Facebook group, send me an email with your Facebook, like a link to your Facebook page, and I'll get you added into the private group because you guys belong there if you want to be there. And it really means a lot to us to have you guys supporting us through Patreon. So check it out if you want to help us out. Thank you very much.
I love that. He's been practicing that all week.
Well, thanks for noticing that, Gary. I appreciate it a lot. Like that didn't fit at all. All right. Next week is the last week of the month. And the last week of the month, I got to stop doing that. I'm going to drive everybody nuts. The last week of the month is the topic episode where we just throw a topic on the table and then we devour it and fully digest it. The topic will be whether you're playing offense or defense. And we'll talk about several different ins and outs of offense and defense, or whether you should be playing offense at this time or playing defense. And it's important to know your role. If you think you're attacking while somebody's got full mount, you're probably doing the wrong thing.
That's definitely the wrong.
And that's a clear-cut example. But a lot of times there's gray area, and we're waiting when we shouldn't be waiting, or we're in a hurry when we should probably be waiting and be more patient with things. And I think it'll be a helpful discussion to just help us realize, where we are in this. And of course it fluctuates as the match or the round goes on. You're not always stuck on one or the other, but if you know what you should be doing, I think it's going to be helpful. So that'll be next week, my friends. We've talked about our Facebook a couple of times on here. We've got the quote from our Facebook page, and Gary's going to be posting up a meme about a wrestling quote. Is that right, Gary?
I'm still trying to find it.
If he finds it, he'll post it up there.
Let us down, Gary.
Download the BjjBrick app while you're down there getting the Marune app to go hand in hand. You can listen to the podcast easily on the app. Gary, here's the bad thing. It's only funny to you and me and maybe a couple of people out there. So Joe's not even chuckling at it, and he always gives us a sympathy chuckle. So we know it's not that funny.
That's what makes it better, though.
Anyway, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Man, it's been a great episode, guys. Start to finish, and once again, didn't miss a thing. Oh, come on, guys. Train hard, train smart, and get better. We'll see you on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.